everyone, Miss Carrie here with a scrapbook page I created for COAPA Cut files, 20 Days of Christmas. Today's theme is stitching, so I will be creating a layout featuring some photos of our son learning how to make a quilt with his grandmother. For today's page design, I will be using this Stitched Diamonds cut file. This is a very detailed file designed to use as is to look like a stitched background, or you could add some thread or twine to it, which is what I plan to do. I selected this design because it's going to fit the quilting theme, but I do want to warn you that this does take quite a bit of time to cut out. Mine is cut at 11 by 11, so the holes are a little bit larger. The smaller you make the image, the smaller those stitching holes are going to be. I have also gathered an assortment of items that I want to use on this page. I have my SCT sampler pack from October. I also have some letter stickers, some sweet button stickers, and a few little flags and florals. I'm going to add links to all the items I have here in the description below, along with a link to that Stitched Diamond cut file. I'm going to start with the stitching on the background. Now, I'm not going to make you watch me stitch this entire background, but I do want to give you a few tips to help you out. You're going to want to start with a thread that fits the size of holes your machine created. Mine was a larger piece, so the stitching holes are larger than a standard sewing thread. Here is a sample card of the types of twine and thread I have in my craft space. You can see that the thicknesses and textures vary, so you're going to want to pick one that's going to fit well with the design you're creating. Once you've selected a thread, you can choose a needle that has an eye that will fit the thread. If you are using sewing thread, a simple sewing needle will do. But embroidery thread and twine require a larger eye, which would require an embroidery needle. Lastly, threading the needle can be tricky, and the older I get, the harder it is. I do have a video here on my channel where I share some tools that I use to help me with threading needles, and I'll add a link to that video in the upper right corner so that you can save it for later. I'm going to be using embroidery thread on this page in two colors. I've selected a tan color for the diamonds and a burgundy color for the circles. Like I said earlier, you do not have to sew on this page. It is designed to look just like stitching, so you could use it as is or back it with another color. Embroidery thread has 6 strands of thread in it, and I am using 3 strands of thread for my stitching design because I don't want it to be as bulky as it would with 6 strands of thread. Alright, this is going to take me a little bit of time, so I'm going to grab myself a cup of coffee, turn on my favorite show, and get to work. Off camera, I added most of the stitching. The portions that are blank are going to be the places where I'm putting photos and some pattern paper. So I decided to save myself a little bit of time and skip the stitching in those areas. I'm going to keep the rest of the page rather simple. This background is super detailed and has a lot of pattern to it, so I just want to create some grounding points for the photos with some paper strips and a couple of little elements. I have cut these little strips at 3/4 of an inch wide using some patterns that look almost like fabric. And these colors are going to match all of the other items that I'm using on the page. I am placing these vertically onto my background, and I have added a little bit of stitching to these with a sewing machine, which matches the sewing theme I have for this layout. I have gone ahead and backed my photos in some white cardstock. The smaller photos are backed in craft paper, and the larger photo is backed in wood grain paper. I also inked the edges with some dark brown ink to help them stand out a little bit. The photo in the center is going to be placed on a foam sheet to help it stand out just a little bit more, and I'm going to layer it over the other two photos. Above those photos, I'm going to be adding these button cardstock stickers. I love these little buttons, and they go perfectly with this quilting theme. These three photos are some of my favorite photos of our son. His grandmother spent time teaching him how to create his own quilt from start to finish. Now, in our home, all of our children, male and female, were taught basic skills like sewing, cooking, cleaning, automotive care, and simple home repair, and a lot more. Not only did my husband and I teach our children these skills, but other people like grandparents and aunts and uncles helped teach them these skills. As they've gotten older, they continue to use these skills as adults, and I am so grateful that they had people in their lives to teach them the basics. While I'm finishing this up, I want to let you know that I'm going to be adding more COAPA Cut file projects. Make sure that you tap that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on the rest of my projects. So I've gone ahead and added all the buttons to the layout with a few little phrases and wood shapes. At this point, I want to add a title to the base of the page. I'm going to create a phrase that says, "This was so perfect." I have this sticker title from my SCT subscription, and I'm going to place this below the photos. And then I'm going to add a little mauve sticker strip for the word "so." The teal letters I'm using for this are very small, so I need a way for them to stand out a little bit more. This colored strip not only helps it stand out, but it also matches the color of his shirt and some of the buttons I've added to the page. After adding the word "so," I'm going to place that word "perfect" onto the page. And I'm just going to overlap that mauve strip a tiny bit so that it looks like a completed title. At the last minute, I decided to add a few little yellow leaves to bring more of that color to the page. Beside the word "perfect," I'm going to add 2 little wooden hearts to finish off my visual triangle. And then I'm going to frame up that title with a little tag over there on the left. Now I'm going to go type up my journaling, and then I'll share this finished layout. Here is the completed layout. I backed the page in the wood grain pattern that is around the photo so that it draws your eye to the center of the page. At the top, I have a little tab, and when I pull this out, my story is hidden in a pocket. This is a great way to be able to add a longer story when your page doesn't have much room on it to write. I have also finished up some of the stitching, and I added thread to the buttons. I love how this page came together and how well that stitched background goes with my quilting theme. I'm going to share a few close-ups of this layout so that you can see it in a little bit more detail. This page records a memory of our son learning how to sew with his grandmother. I think my favorite part of this page are all those little buttons. They emphasize the sewing thing and bring in some great color and pattern to the layout. If you enjoy pinning photos to inspiration boards, I have added still shots to my website for you to use. Don't forget that COAPA Cut Files will be releasing new files during their 20 days of December, and you can enjoy a savings on some of their files in the shop. In the description below, I have added a link to the file I used today, along with the list of supplies and a link to the COAPA Cut File shop. I hope that today's project inspired you to create something new. If you have any questions about this project or the supplies I used, feel free to leave me a comment. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.